Okay, folks, you should have watched the Khan Academy videos on how you change a fraction to a decimal, and you do that by division, long division. So if we have 2/3, you saw the way you do that. It just means 2 divided by 3. 2 divided by 3, or 2 divided by 3. Okay, put the decimal point there, the decimal goes straight up there, and then you added the zeros, and then the long division takes place, correct? So 3 cannot go into 2, but 3 can go into 20 6 times. We subtract, we bring down the 0. 3 goes into 20 6 times. What do you see? Looks like we are going to go on and on and on and on and on and on like this forever. This is called a repeating decimal, which means it just repeats and goes on, and there's a way to show that. You put a bar over the 6. You could say it's 0.66 repeating. Okay, so 2/3 is equal to 0.66. You can also put it over just one of the 6's. Either way is okay. Alright, well now I'm going to show you an even easier way to do it. If you're allowed to use a calculator, then all you have to do is on your handy dandy calculator is plug this in. So why don't you pause if you don't have your calculator and plug in 2 divided by 3 and see what you get. Okay, well, you probably saw it went like this, 0.666666. In the very end it had a 7. Well, the reason why it did that is because it just rounded it. It rounded it to the last place value. So really, that would be the correct answer. Okay, so you can change a fraction to a decimal super easy by just plugging it into your calculator. Why don't you plug in now change 3/4 to a decimal. Now remember, that's one that I told you should memorize, so you should know what the correct answer is, but go ahead, plug in 3 divided by 4, and boom, you should get 0.75, right? Okay, so 2 ways changing a fraction to a decimal. Long division, if you're not allowed to use a calculator, but if you can, just plug it into your calculator. Okay, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Alright, so what about going the other way? What about if I have a decimal and I want to change it to a fraction? Well, we did this already in class. Remember, you look at the place value. This is the tenths, this is the hundredths. So we just say this number. This number is 23 hundredths. 23 hundredths. And that's how you change a decimal into a fraction. Pretty easy, right? Okay. What if we have a number in front of that? We did this in class, right? 2.571. So this is a whole number. This is 2, and this is tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So 2 and 571 thousandths. It's a mixed number. Okay, so that was easy peasy stuff also. So there's one more thing I need to talk to you about, and that is equivalent fractions. Okay? Alright, so equivalent fractions are just fractions that are equal. Alright, let's show you. So there is a half. Okay? I've just shaded in a half of that box. Now if I take that same box but this time I turned it into fourths, and I'm going to shade in the same amount as before, but this time I've shaded in 2 parts of a total of 4. I've shaded 2 fourths. Here I've shaded 1 part out of 2. Here I have shaded 2 parts out of 4, but it's exactly the same size. So 1/2 is equal to 2 fourths. Interesting, huh? What if I take that same box, but this time, well, that's not a very good line, is it? Let's make it look a little better. Okay. Now, I've made 6 little sections. And I'm going to shade the same amount as before, but this time it's 1, 2, 3 sixths. Those are all equal fractions. They're showing the same amount. 1/2, 2 fourths, 3 sixths. They are all equal. They're saying the same thing. They're called equivalent fractions. Okay, so how do I get from 1/2 to equal 3 sixths? Well, I multiplied the numerator and the denominator both by the same number. I multiplied the top by 3 and the bottom by 3, and I got 3 sixths. So you can see that they are the same, and this is how you make them the same, by multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So if I had 4 fifths and I wanted to make an equal fraction from that, make an equivalent fraction, all I would have to do is multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, and I'm going to have an equivalent fraction. So if I multiplied the top by 2 and the bottom by 2, I would get 8 tenths. And 4 fifths would be equal to 8 tenths. As long as you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, you're going to make an equivalent fraction. Let's take 4 fifths, but this time multiply the numerator and the denominator by 3. Go ahead and do that and tell me what is the equivalent fraction that you come up with. Did you get 12 fifteenths? 4 fifths is equal to 12 fifteenths. You've made equivalent fractions. You can even go the other way. 12 fifteenths, if I divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number, I'm going to make an equivalent fraction, but this time I'm turning it into lowest terms. So if I divide 12 divided by 3, 15 divided by 3, I get 4 fifths. And we say 4 fifths is in simplest form. And the reason why it's in simplest form is there's nothing that I can divide both of them by that will turn into a nice, there's nothing divisible that I can divide both of them by. That's what I'm trying to say. So that is in simplest form. So you can create equivalent fractions by multiplying the numerator and denominator by the same number, or dividing the numerator and the denominator by the same number. All right, let's do a little bit of practice on this. Let's take 2/3, and I'd like you to multiply 2/3 by 3 to create an equivalent fraction. Pause and do that right now. You should have got 6/9. 2/3 is equal to 6/9. You just made an equivalent fraction. You could take 2/3 and multiply it by 4. And now you've made 8/12, another equivalent fraction. Okay, I'm going to give you 10/15. Now, is 10/15 in simplest form? Is it in simplest form? Or is there a number I can divide into both of them? Well, if you know your divisibility rules, you know I can divide both of them by 5 because this ends in a 0 and this ends in a 5. So if I divide the numerator by 5 and the denominator by 5, I'm going to get 10 divided by 5 is 2 and 15 divided by 5 is 3. I'm going to get 2/3. And there's no other number that I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by, so we say this is in simplest form. Alright, so that's equivalent fractions, and that is also simplest form. I'm going to give you a problem, and I want you to change it into simplest form. Okay, let's give you 14/18. Will you please change that into its simplest form, and it'll also be an equivalent fraction to 14/18. So pause and figure out your answer. Alright, did you get 7/9? Awesome. Okay, so 7/9 is in simplest form, and we also can say that my pen decided to stop writing. Interesting. Okay, well, we can say that 7/9 is equal to 14/18.